you run your firm, you've got a busy practice,
right?
But you also not find time, you make time to get out there and live a full life. How do you do that?
Well, it's something intentional that I decided early on in my career that being a lawyer is maybe the 8th most important thing in my life. You know, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a sibling, I'm a friend, and it just goes down the ride. Like, those are the things that matter, because I don't believe that you have to spend all your waking hours thinking about the law, thinking about your clients in order to do well in this profession.
This is RVA Trial Lawyers, Virginia's trial lawyer podcast, hosted by Sharif Gray and Niall Abuzaki.
All right, before we get into the podcast episode, I want to take a minute or two and introduce you to a friend and colleague, Jenny Shadini. Jenny is a former prosecutor from Baltimore City, and now she works as a settlement consultant. We work with her often on helping our clients really maximize their results. Jenny, it's really great working with you and having you as a supporter of the podcast.
Thank you, Sharif. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Shadini, and I work as a settlement consultant, which means I work with attorneys and their clients in various settlement planning needs, such as structured settlements, whether or not to utilize a trust, how to protect government benefits, and overall providing financial security to your clients.
And Jenny, how could people get a hold of you?
The best way to reach me would be my cell, which is 301-332-1031. Again, that's 301-332-1031.
All right, we're back, RVA Trial Lawyers, and today we have a good friend, Matt Long, from, and I'm not going to mess up the firm name this time, Bowen, 10, Long, and Ball.
That's
here
right.
in Richmond, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
So Matt and I have been in touch for a few years now. We talk often, get lunch, and I tell you what, Matt, the thing that I am most envious of is your travel photos, like, by far. So
thank you.
For those who do not follow Matt Long on LinkedIn, you should, one. But what's most impressive is Matt is, and on a serious note, Matt is very intentional about living a full life. And that's not just work, that's spending time with family, friends, traveling, seeing the world. And it's, and the message, at least, that you put out to others, I think is a really important one. And frankly, it's one that I probably need to do a better job following. So anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And really excited to have you. Why don't you take a second and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Matt Long. I'm the president of Bowen, 10, Long, and Ball. I've been practicing law actually 17 years on the 14th. I think, I got the email from the bar that you get really excited about, or the Virginia Board of Bar Examiners letting you know you passed the bar exam. I got that on October 15th, 2009. So I think that's 17 years, 16?
I am not good with math.
Yes. So, and the whole time, all I've done is civil litigation. That's it. I've been at 2 firms. I've been at this one for 10 years. I was at another firm for 6 years and another 2 while I was in law school. And all I've ever done is civil litigation. I started off doing pretty robust, like, business litigation. So, $100,000 cases in circuit court, like, from day one, like, hey, go do this. And that was what I started doing when I was a baby lawyer. No criminal defense, no traffic law, none of that. I just kind of jumped into that. And then over time, I left that firm, and now it's mostly still civil litigation. I do some of those business litigation suits as well, but I also do a lot of plaintiff's personal injury work, which is how I met you. And then I also do a lot of partition suits. So really a robust civil lit practice, mostly focused on personal injury and partition suits, which are 2 of the most different areas of law you can think of. But it's just, that's how it kind of worked out,
Yeah, but it's still plaintiff's work, right?
It's still, not always. I do defense work, not on the injury side, but obviously someone will reach out to our firm, with a civil case where they're being sued, right, for breach of contract or some sort of business tort that's not covered by insurance, right, and they need to hire a lawyer, and, we do that as well. So I do a lot of that.
Something I didn't mention, which I now looking back, I should have mentioned at the beginning, is you also run a Listserv.
I do.
Right? And tell us about that Listserv.
Right. So, I want to say 12 years ago, I was having coffee with a lawyer named Julie who ran a small, IP firm. And she had started this listserv of, small and solo firms in Richmond. And at the time, it maybe had 40 members. And she had just gotten a job at Troutman Sanders, or whatever they're called now. And she's like, I can't run this thing anymore. I need to pass this off to someone. And so she handed me the keys to the kingdom, at least in terms of managing it. And, here we are now, and it's got around 180 law firms on it. And I'm normally adding 1 or 2 law firms a week. And it's really just a space where small and solo law firms can refer cases to each other, ask questions, sort of in a safe space where we can, not worry about whether the other side is on the case or not. But then also, make sure we kind of keep things in-house, because a lot of times things get, bumped up to the bigger, mid-size, and large firms. Not that they're bad, but, we want to look out for each other and refer what we can when we can. So a lot of personal injury lawyers on there, a lot of civil litigators on there, a lot of criminal defense lawyers, bankruptcy lawyers, real estate, like you name it. It runs the gamut of everyone. So,
And for the listeners who want to see if they can be a part of that, reach out to you?
Yes, just email me and I will get you added. We only have 2 rules. One is be nice. The other is no politics. Those are the only 2 rules. So as long as you can be nice and not talk politics, you're welcome to join the group and stay in the group. I haven't had to kick anyone out yet, so.
I'll make sure I stay off the naughty list then. But one thing you and I talked about a while ago, which I think is an often overlooked population, are those people who have real, legitimate legal issues, but have trouble finding competent counsel short of the big firm rate.
Right.
And it sounds like, my impression is, your firm at least does a little bit of that work to try and help.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think it's more of the opposite. I think that there's a lot of people out there that have real legal issues and they can't find any lawyers who want to help them. And this is something I talk about on LinkedIn all the time. And, this is something I've actually reached out to a couple of the lobbying arms of various bar associations about. And next year, I think I'm going to make this my little project. But, right now in Virginia, if you are a LLC or corporation and the matter in dispute is greater than $2,500, you must, by law, hire a lawyer to represent you, period, the end. And most LLCs and corporations are just normal people. These aren't, wealthy people. These are just single members LLC. Maybe you own a handyman company or a plumbing business, or you sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace, whatever. And if they are in a dispute involving $3,000, $4,000, they have no legal recourse, none, because there is not a lawyer in the world that's going to take a $4,000 case. And so that needs to be bumped up considerably from $2,500, which is, I think, when the law was passed, whenever it was 30 years ago, that needs to be bumped up to maybe $30,000, because most lawyers who do what I do, most lawyers who do civil litigation, they're not touching a case where the dollar amount is that slow if you're billing someone by the hour. So I'd say it's almost the opposite. That's something that the General Assembly needs to fix, and that's something that the various bar associations need to focus on fixing, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have any help at all in the legal world.
It's also, I think, hard to find. Like, I get calls all the time from people who they've got legitimate legal issues and they need help, and it's not easy to find help.
Right.
I mean, for example, I had a former injury client who, great guy, and he had a lemon law issue. And man, I tried to get him somebody. I couldn't. Ultimately, I ended up helping him kind of on my own and gave him some guidance, and to his credit, did an incredible job on his own at one of these lemon law arbitrations. But it's not easy to find your just general civil practitioner nowadays.
And, so I manage this law firm with 170 lawyers, and I need to give credit to another lawyer, Brad Mars. He organizes the social events and the lunches, which are much more fun than the emails. So thank you, Brad.
This is the Listserv.
This is the Listserv. Okay. So we also have lunches, we have happy hours. He manages all of that, and it's certainly not required. I mean, people show up, but it's not like all 180 members show up. But if anyone were to reach out, if I were to leave this podcast and I were to send an email to that listserv and I were to say, hey, someone's reaching out to me about a landlord-tenant issue, can anyone help? Crickets, zero. There are no lawyers in this town that do that work anymore. None. I mean, maybe there's a few, but it's just the way the world works now. It's become too post-COVID, like that particular issue has become very complex in terms of the various checkboxes that need to be done. And so lawyers have decided, I'm just not going to do that anymore because there's no way that I can effectively represent my client and have it worth their while, so to speak. So residential tenants don't have any recourse unless they qualify for legal aid. And residential landlords don't really have any recourse either because it's just not something that lawyers want to do. And that's just one example. There's many, many examples, Sharif, of, hey, can anyone help with this? Crickets. Like, no one can help. And I don't know what the solution is other than, taking the American rule of attorney fees and throwing it in the trash can, which I don't think that would be that bad an idea for some cases where if you sue someone and you win, you get your legal fees for certain cases. Maybe not all cases, but for some, I think you do. And that would maybe allow a lot more lawyers to take those cases and a lot more clients be willing to hire lawyers to take those cases. But, I think we're a long time from having that. I don't think it works in all cases. And as I like to say, this is why Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard in Virginia, because we don't have that rule. If he had sued her in California and he lost, but not here.
Talk about a trial that got a lot of attention. So, and a lot of court time too. When that case comes up, I'm still blown away. I mean, how long was it? It was a month or 2 months?
It took forever, but it was must-see TV. And I don't know if you remember Camille Vasquez. Mm-hmm. She was amazing. And I went to a conference in Atlanta, the CRISP conference, and she was one of the presenters, and I got to have my picture taken with her and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I don't know which one I was more excited about because she was so famous at the time. It was right after the trial, and it was like a week later, and she was, she was the most famous lawyer in America at that time, and yeah, I met Arnold and I met her, and I got more excited about meeting her.
Whenever I think about like that trial, I'm like, man, how in the world did they convince the court to give them that long to try the case? Because I have issues sometimes like, wait, you want more than 2 days?
Right,
like,
right.
How dare you, right?
2038 is the next date we have available, Sharif.
That's right. Actually, my latest crusade is I've got a case now where the defense is fighting me on my ability to get a trial date, which blows my mind.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating.
It's just absolutely absurd. Like, we do not need to wait for you to file your motion to dismiss and then order. Like, if you have a meritorious motion, go ahead and file it.
Right.
And we'll get it heard. But that doesn't stop us from getting a trial date.
Right.
So.
And there's some jurisdictions around here that I know are doing stuff on Saturdays now. That I don't know if you knew about that, but yeah, some of the more rural ones. And it's just look, and when politicians are running for office, they're talking about schools, they're not talking about courts. Like, no one cares if, no one's going to run on the position, I'm going to put more money in the court system, more money for clerks, more money for judges, higher salary for court staff. No one cares about any of that stuff other than lawyers. And so, we have a demand that's not being met because, there aren't enough judges, there aren't enough staff. It's hard to fill. There's JDR courts around town. I don't practice in JDR, but pretty much all the lawyers I work with do. And there's some jurisdictions where like the elected clerk is doing the job of, the courtroom clerk because they just can't keep the position filled. And so it's only going to get harder, I think, as, the population increases and the court does not increase in size. It's just going to be harder to get a trial date.
Yeah, and add to that, I mean, it's also, there are less lawyers in the profession. So, so this is our doomsday podcast, right?
Right.
But no, in many ways, though, it's not a good thing when we're having less lawyers join the bar, when there's less resources, when people are underserved.
Right.
That said, I mean, it is also opportunity for those of us who are in the profession.
Absolutely.
I mean, the phone rings, and knock on wood, that continues to happen. But I like you, I don't know what the solution is.
Right. I don't. And there's legal deserts, which is another issue. And I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff and follow it pretty closely. But you have counties around Virginia and the whole United States where there are no lawyers, like none. And we get lots of phone calls from places like Mecklenburg and, Greensville and Suffolk. And they're like, I've called over 50 lawyers and I got to come to you because they're either not there or they don't have any availability. And I don't know what the solution is, because if you're a lawyer and you open shop in a rural jurisdiction, you've got to do everything. Because if you just focus on one thing, there's not enough business. You can't be a personal injury lawyer in a small rural county. There aren't enough car accidents. You can't just be a divorce lawyer. You got to be kind of a jack of all trades. And people don't want that. People don't want that. But that's the only way you can survive in these small counties is to do everything just because there isn't enough volume to support one practice area.
So let's transition a little bit. So obviously very busy. You run your firm. You've got a busy practice.
Right.
But you also not find time. You make time to get out there and live a full life.
Right.
How do you do that?
Well, it's something intentional that, I decided early on in my career that I was not. I saw a lot of lawyers who, being a lawyer is kind of how they identify themselves. Like, if you were to ask them who they are, that would be like, oh, I'm a lawyer, or that would be may have like the top couple of things they mentioned. And, from very early on in my career, I did not want to be like that. And so, I talk about this on LinkedIn a lot about how being a lawyer is maybe the 8th most important thing in my life. I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a sibling, I'm a friend, and you just go down the ride. Like those are the things that matters, And so I've always tried to focus on the things that matter because I don't believe that you have to spend all your waking hours thinking about the law, thinking about your clients in order to do well in this profession. I think it's almost an addiction that people fall into. At least that's the way I see it. And I think generationally, that's not as much of an issue as it used to be. I think the younger generation recognizes that, and good for them. You know what I mean? It's mainly something you see with the older generations where, I'll have cases with lawyers on the other side and I'll be like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be on vacation next week. And they'll literally say to me, wow, I haven't taken a vacation in 18 years. Like they literally say that to me. And I was like, dude, you need to do that because that's crazy. So it's just something that I feel strongly about, but it also requires me to take things off my plate, right? So, slow down, not take as many cases. Last year, I had a moment in time where I was just taking everything that came in the door and just getting really busy and really nuts. And my paralegal, who's great, she was like, Matt, like, you're driving everyone here crazy. You need to slow down. You know what I mean? Like, so I was driving and I'm glad she said it because I was driving one in the law firm nuts. I was driving her nuts and I was just overwhelmed and I had to scale it back a little bit. And I think a lot of people just do that all the time. Like that's just their normal day at work is being overwhelmed every single day. And I think that's just something people have to try to scale back on.
Are there anything that you do religiously that's like, you know what, you don't take phone calls after this time. You don't check emails unless it's A, B, and C. Are there things that you do that you think would be helpful for people to adopt?
I wouldn't say there's anything I do religiously because we all break rules, even our own rules. But I would say sort of best practices is I control my own calendar. So my paralegal can put things on my calendar, but I'm ultimately in charge of it and I'm paying attention to it. And I'm normally scheduling most things. So I think being in control of your own calendar is important and not letting people just fill it up with junk, right? And then I think to that degree, having white space on your calendar is important. Obviously, you're in an all-day trial, you don't have white space. But if you're not in court that day, you need to have white space on your calendar, meaning space on your calendar where something isn't planned, where you're not meeting with someone, you're not scheduled to work on something. It's just space to handle whatever pops up. Because, any given day at work, you go into it thinking you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that totally changes every single day, 100% of the time. Yeah. So unless you have white, so I would say being in control of your own calendar, having white space, and then also, for those lawyers that are in a leadership role at their law firm, partner or manager or whatever, being able to delegate, right? You've got to be able to delegate things to other people and not take everything on yourself. And so I think a lot of people don't delegate and that puts added pressure on them. And so just like as a lawyer, you delegate stuff to your paralegal or you delegate something to your legal assistant. If you're an owner, if you're a partner, you need to be able to delegate stuff to your office manager or delegate stuff to other people. You know what I mean? I think that's important too. So delegation, white space, and being in control of your own calendar. I guess those are the three things that have worked for me very well.
When you say being in control of your own calendar, do you have any like bright line rules you try and follow?
I don't meet with anyone after lunchtime on Friday. I think that's a good rule. I haven't done it in 10 years. Like I don't have any meetings, period. First of all, they're normally canceled. Who wants to meet with a lawyer on Friday afternoon, So, that's just one, but I don't really have any rules. No, I don't. I like to have space between meetings, I guess. Like some lawyers can go back to back to back to back. That would be my other room. Like I'm not going to have back to back meetings. I need space to get some water, use the bathroom, and digest what just happened, and follow up emails or follow up whatever it is I have to do based on that meeting. But I think that would be my only real rule is I don't have anything back to back. Which I mean that. Like to the point I made earlier, I mean, that's going to mitigate the amount of cases you take on. If you're not taking back-to-back meetings, if you're not taking back-to-back phone calls, that's less clients, less works. But I don't know how to do it and still live a fruitful, free life because otherwise I'd just be in meetings all day and meeting with people all day. And that would drive me nuts.
I want to dig into that a little bit more. A fruitful, free life. What is that for you?
Oh man. So
welcome to the podcast.
I mean, I'll be honest, and hopefully this doesn't sound arrogant, and horrible, especially coming from you, who you went to VMI and then you were in the military. So this is like the exact opposite of what I'm about to say. But I think for me, it's largely being able to control my own day-to-day schedule, I guess, and do, you know what I mean? Like no one's telling me what to do, Sharif. Whether it's a boss or the officer at VMI or it's just, I think for me, that's important. And that's been important for me since I was 16 and I worked at Domino's Pizza and I left because it was like, I don't want to go somewhere where someone's telling me what to do every day. So I've largely been, put myself in situations where I'm largely in control of my own schedule, largely in control of my own work. Or even if I was working somewhere as an associate, I had the freedom to do that. And that was discussed on the front end because I think that's what makes me more happy than anything in the world is controlling my workflow, controlling my schedule, controlling my day without other people passing their procrastination off onto me, which is, I think, what you see at a lot of law firms, where you have partners passing off things to junior attorneys that are due the next day and like, hey, I need you to do this. Like, I wouldn't be able to handle that, man. It would drive me nuts. So did I answer your question?
You did. You did.
So I know that's like the exact opposite of your experience.
No, but I can relate to it. I
yeah.
think when people ask me like, what's so great about being a lawyer,
right,
a big part of that answer is always autonomy.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yes.
And to have, you have this special degree, right?
Right.
You're dealing with very difficult issues, and to have the autonomy to work towards helping your clients through those issues, to me, is one of the best parts of being an attorney.
Oh, yeah.
Like you, and I think, frankly, like most people, don't like the idea of getting that email at 5:30 saying, hey, I need this by tomorrow, right? And that's probably a different conversation. Then we need to talk about leadership, and we need to talk about what example are you setting for the people in your firm.
And people do that to their staff also, which is not good. When people, I talk about this all the time, not returning phone calls and emails promptly and offloading procrastination are like two of the biggest character flaws I see in attorneys. So, I know you've experienced this too. Every lawyer has. I call opposing counsel, I email them, and I just don't hear back from them. It's like, well, what are you doing? Like, are you on vacation in Antarctica? Are you on the moon? Like, why can't you get back to me? Even if it's just to say, hey, I'm in a 5-day jury trial, I'll have to get back to you next week, which is a response. Like, just say that, man. And so that drives me nuts. And then the other thing too is, when I see, I guess, talking to opposing counsel and they blame their staff, right? So, I gave that to my paralegal and I'm just waiting to get it back from her. I'm sorry I don't have it. It's like, you know what? That's your problem, man. Like, you need to own that rather than relying and blaming it on someone else. You know what I mean? And so I think those are two things that I see a lot of lawyers do that really takes you down a notch in my eye. Like, ultimately, you're the quarterback. Ultimately, you as a lawyer and a leader, you need to accept the blame even when things aren't your fault, right? And you need to give credit to other people even when, it's because you did it. So give credit to others, right, and shoulder the blame. That's kind of what being a leader is, right?
Have you read Extreme Ownership by Jocko?
So I am into simple things, Sharif. I like Marvel movies and John Grisham. I don't like any sort of nonfiction or any sort of complicated movies. My work life is too complex. So unless it's...
Well, I mean, you don't need to read the book based on what you just said. But
Right.
I've got it on the bookshelf over there.
I like James Patterson and Spider-Man.
I like it. I'm a fan.
Nothing complicated.
The quote from Uncle Ben is a quote that I use often.
There we go. Yeah.
Right?
Great people, or what is it?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Right. But anyway, I interrupted you. What's the book about?
It's about, extreme ownership. So it's about exactly what you're talking about.
Gotcha.
It's about, when you are willing to accept responsibility for yourself, for your team, things become so much clearer.
Right.
And your team respects you and they're willing to run through the wall for you and all that stuff. But my biggest pet peeve, I think, in civil practice, which is, I don't get it, is the lack of response. There are attorneys in our area, unfortunately, who almost have a policy of no response when it comes to email. And I don't think it's appropriate, but
it's the number one bar complaint for like the last 60 years. I'm on the disciplinary committee for the bar, and most of that stuff doesn't come to me, but I hear about it. But the bar is constantly, a client will file a bar complaint. So-and-so lawyer has not called me back, emailed me back. I've been trying to reach out to them for 3 months about my divorce or about my, criminal case or my car accident, whatever it is. And then the bar just, calls the lawyer. They pick up the phone then, right? They're like, hey, can you call back client X? Yeah, sure, no problem. And then they call them back. Isn't that crazy? Like that's what it has to be like.
Well, it's also crazy to think that those law firms are in business, right?
Right.
That you can actually have a sustainable practice and by not calling clients back, or opposing counsel. That's an issue that I deal with often, which I'm not a fan of. And I'm so vigilant about responding. At least I believe I am. I'm sure there are people who listen to this and say, no, Sharif's terrible, whatever. But so we use Google Suite for our emails. I actually turned off the whole conversation view because I'm afraid that I will miss something.
Right.
And so now I get each individual email just to make sure I know that I get to respond. Because I think it's important. I think that's the professional thing to do. But let's talk more about, how do you, as the president of your firm, how do you make the firm embody what you're talking about? Like, embrace this culture and not have people offloading, as you say, their procrastination onto your staff and other attorneys.
Honestly, I think it's as simple as having A-level people. Really, I think everyone that works at our firm is great. I think we've made great hiring decisions. And I think everyone is an A-level person across the board, from receptionist to intake and lawyers and office manager. And I think that when you have A-level people just do this stuff anyway, right? I don't know. That's just kind of what I've discovered over the years. And what does that mean? Well, you have to pay people well and treat people well. You know what I mean? But if you have an office with B and C level employees, they're not going to do these things, and you're going to have to create all these rules and everything. So I think that organically and naturally, at least with us, I think most people are just like that anyway. And, and when people deviate from that, including myself, they get called out on it, and then they go back to the center again.
Well, that's important to notice. So the fact that they are willing to call that person out is something that's very, very important and should be given a lot of credit, right? Because it shows, at least for my let me tell this story, because I think it's important. But I remember reading this book about when I was becoming a parent and all that stuff, and I forgot the title of the book. I'll have to look it up. I'm sure it'll come to me as soon as we end this episode. But it showed there was family A and there was family B. Mm-hmm. And family A was around a dinner table, proper, polite, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, pass the dishes, all that. Now, keep in mind, this is all hypothetical, right? Family B is around the dinner table. They're joking, making a mess, calling each other names.
Right.
And then the book goes, well, which family is healthier?
Right.
And I think the knee-jerk reaction is, well, look at family A, look how respectful they are. And then the book makes the point that no, it's actually family B, because family A, they're so uptight that the people in that family potentially fear an impact to their relationships if they
Right.
deviate from what is expected of them.
Right.
Whereas family B, they love each other and know that calling each other names or screwing around with each other, that's at the end of the day,
Right.
they love each other. And
Right.
it is what it is. And so, it's kind of wild how we're talking about like therapy stuff in
Right.
the context of a law firm. But the fact that your firm is close enough and has enough solid people and has the bonds that they are people in your firm, staff included, are willing to call you out on these things
Right.
and can hold other people accountable, I think says quite a bit.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's it's not always rainbows and unicorns, right? I mean, there's always something going on that's like, oh no, we got to pivot and deal with this, and then the A-level people comment, that only works up to a certain point, in terms of size. So, we've got 20 people, right? If we had 100 people, you're going to have a lot more issues and a lot more problems. And that's where having defined processes and defined procedures and all of that become much more important because, it just the dynamics change. And, we didn't have 20 people when I started. I think we had maybe 10 or 11. So we've doubled in size in the last decade. And it is different. But at the same time, it's also, I think, at the end of the day, you just got to treat your coworkers with respect and also make sure that feedback is welcome 100% of the time by everyone. And so for me, I have a very open door policy where people will come in and just say whatever's on their mind, and they know that I'm not going to react negatively to it. Because that's just not who I am. There's nothing about it. Anyone who gets to know me isn't going to, they're just not going to think that about me. And so I try to have that open door policy. At the end of the day, it's also sort of keeping your eyes open and paying attention to what people are saying. We use surveys sometimes. Surveys are great to send to your employees, like anonymous surveys, to just ask questions about whatever. I think that's a real good way to get feedback is surveys as well, because people tell you whatever they want if it's anonymous, right?
That's right.
They have to believe it's really anonymous. It is, but
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, that's why those reviews online, those anonymous reviews online
Right.
are always a
Right.
treat to read, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's this one. We'll talk about then the transition from, you still obviously handle cases, but
Right.
transitioning to being the president of the firm,
Right.
taking more of a business-minded management type position. How has that been? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, no, I enjoy it a lot. Since kindergarten, whenever there was a group project, I was normally one of the ones in charge. It's just the way I am. I think a lot of lawyers are like that. And so when it comes to law firm stuff, going back to my first day at my first law firm, what did I say, October 9th, 2009, I think on October 10th, 2009, I was going into the managing partner's office with like a laundry list of things that needed to be changed. That's just the way I am. And to his credit, he listened to me and we implemented a lot of those changes over time. And these were obvious things, like the computers didn't work, like here's an IT company that can help us. Hey, we're still doing this the way they did things in, 1979, so a lot of these things didn't need to change. And then when I came here, it was, or it wasn't as intense because, it wasn't like that. We weren't using, we didn't have really the same issues, but I gradually integrated myself into, making suggestions when appropriate. Because that's honestly, Sharif, that's just kind of the part that I enjoy. But at the same time, I'm still a lawyer, right? And I still have clients. And so I have to, remain focused that they are number one, right? I would say the employees are number one, the clients are number two, and then these large granular decisions are number three. So they do take a back seat to employee needs and client needs, if that makes sense.
Talk about that a little bit more. Why, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think I know your answer,
Right.
but I want our listeners to hear. Why are your employees number one and your clients number two?
Well, because at the end of the day, a lot of people, especially on the internet, love to talk about this higher purpose that lawyers and law firms have. And I think that's okay. I think a lot of people do have that. But most people who work at a law firm or any job, they're working in order to provide for their family and pay their mortgage. You know what I mean? That's why our people come to work. They're not coming to work to save the world. They're working because they need to pay groceries, right? And they need to take care of their kids and pay for daycare and buy clothes and provide for their families. And so we need to make sure as owners that the processes are in place to make sure that keeps happening, right? And to make sure that the clients keep coming in, to make sure the clients are taken care of and that people are going to come back and people are going to stick with us. So we stay in business and clients hire us and have a good experience, tell their friends about us. And ultimately our employees come to work, they're happy. And when they go home and their spouse says, "How was your day, honey?" They don't say, "Oh, my day sucked. I hate my job." Because in 2025, they will leave, right? Like people don't stay around at jobs they don't like anymore. It's just not something people do. So that's why focusing on them, I think, is the most important thing, because they're really the backbone of the law firm, the backbone of the client experience, the backbone of everything. And then I say the clients, obviously, because that's our job. That's what we're doing. I mean, the only thing we have to sell is our time. Like that's it. We're not selling widgets. We're not making anything. All we're selling is our time and expertise. And ethically and morally, we have a responsibility to our clients. And, every lawyer knows that. I don't think every lawyer really thinks about what that means sometimes. But
what's also, I think, really important about what you said is when you focus on your people, when you take care of your people, guess who they're going to take care of, right?
Right.
They're going to take care of the clients, right? And
Right.
so I think that's an incredibly important way to look at it. And I agree with everything you're saying. It's more right than just, all right, let's buy pizza on a Friday, right?
Right.
And I know you have a whole thing on like, don't take them to the bowling alley.
Don't take them to the bowling alley. I promise you, at every law firm on planet Earth, all they want to do is go home early and get paid for it. I promise you that. They want to maybe have a lunch, right? And then they want to leave when the lunch is over and go home and get paid 100,000% of the time. And they would rather do that than go to a Richmond Squirrels game. I promise you that. I will die on that hill. At least that's what the survey said that we sent out.
I like it. The anonymous survey,
Yeah, the
right?
anonymous survey. 100%.
No, that's smart.
100%.
The survey makes a lot of sense because
Right.
you're going to get feedback that you may not otherwise get.
Right, and they don't want to do any of that with the spouses either. That's also what the survey said. Like, we just want to go home, but if we do something, we don't want to have to bring our families because that's stressful. And you think about it, you've got kids, you've got a spouse, your girlfriend or whatever, and you got to herd them, and what if they don't like them, and so
Yeah, what if they say something stupid?
What if they say something
yeah.
stupid, and it's just, and so we try to routinely throughout the year have, we take everyone to lunch. And then we send them on their way. And of course, the lawyers can do whatever they want, right? This is really more about the staff. Like they're the ones that get excited about it. So, but yeah, I that's one of the things I like to yak away about on LinkedIn. And most people seem to agree with me. Some people think I'm a horrible person, but whatever.
Well, maybe they just really like bowling alleys.
Maybe they do like bowling alleys. I don't think paralegals like bowling alleys, but
That's funny. Well, I realize we've gone almost 40 minutes now. We haven't even talked about trial work.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that insane?
Oh, look at us. We're just rolling away.
We're just rolling. No, this has been great. Like,
Yeah.
I'm genuinely enjoying this. You and I, we had lunch a couple years ago, and I
Right.
remember we were talking about, or you were sharing with me, really your story about how you approach negotiating cases.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share one kind of that origin story, like how, and then what your approach is?
Right. So my mother, and I'm allowed to talk about this now because she's retired, she was the main bodily injury adjuster at Allstate in Virginia for a large time, like over 10 years or more. So a lot of the people watching this have had her as an adjuster. Any sort of high-value, big PI case in Virginia and Allstate landed on her desk for a very long time. She used to talk to me about this stuff growing up, and one of the main things that she used to tell me growing up was that the only reason that we even exist, the only reason I have a job is to pay out money. And if these am I allowed to swear on here?
You can swear.
If these dumbass PI lawyers understood their case and understood their clients' injuries and understood how to put together a demand package, I'd give them their money, but instead they have their paralegal dump a banker's box full of medical records on me and ask me for $1 million. That's not going to work. So when I became a lawyer, I would, I kind of learned at least how the process worked at Allstate. I did not take Allstate cases. That was a conflict, because it's not like she can give her file to someone else. So I didn't take Allstate cases for 15 years, which was probably a good thing. But with that being said, I sort of learned how at least they evaluate cases there in terms of the metrics they use and everything. And what I took away at the end was that at the end of the day, these adjusters, they just have a job to do. They don't care. They don't care. They would, if it was up to them, they would give you $30 million just so they could close the damn file. Because however many files you have, believe me, they have 50 times more files. I mean, she'd have like 3,000 files on her desk. Yeah. Yes. And so, I mean, all of these adjusters are overworked. All of them are underpaid and overworked. And so the only files that get movement are the ones where you dumb it down so it's real easy for them to understand and make an offer. And so that kind of became my job. It's like, I am going to dumb this down and I'm going to make it simple enough so a sixth grader can understand it. I'm going to have everything organized. I'm going to extrapolate all the CPT codes. I'm going to extrapolate all the ICD codes. I'm going to come up with a narrative demand. I'm going to form a relationship with the adjuster. I'm going to get to know their names. I'm going to get to know their kids' names. I'm going to get to know where their kids go to school. I'm going to get to know their favorite football teams. So by the time I make a demand, I'm friends with Sally. Sally likes me. And when I go back to Sally and say, I need you to get more money, Sally's going to go to her boss because she likes me and she doesn't think I'm an asshole. And that's really how I approach personal injury. And to be honest with you, Sharif, it's worked very, very, very well for me. And it's unique. I think a lot of lawyers get a PI case and they just file suit the next day. You lose your leverage in forming that relationship. Now they don't care about you anymore. And now the case is going to resolve in a year to 2 years after all the depositions and discovery are done, because that's the way that works.
Right. It's not like you file suit and they magically go, here's all the money. Right. Now they hire the defense attorney. The defense attorney's going to bill. And to be fair, like we are not a volume-based PI firm, and I'm only taking cases with like clear liability. I refer the questionable liability cases to you and lawyers like you that's all you do, because that's not really our business model. We don't have the ability to sort of roll the dice like that. But so this really only works for me with cases of clear liability where you're just fighting over money. You know what I mean? Obviously, if there's contributory negligence issues, then it becomes super complex. But, that's just the way I've done it. And pretty much every time I resolve a case, and this is not hyperbole, the adjuster says to me, Matt, I've never worked with someone like you. I've never worked with someone who's made everything so organized, and I've never worked with someone who made it so easy for me to do my job. And what is their job? Their job is asking for more money. Like, that's their job. That's what adjusters do. Like, that's all they do all day is just go to their boss and ask for more money. And so if they have the ammunition to do that and the motivation to do that, they can do that because they have their reserves, right? And those are finite, right? And the way they get more reserves is they have to shake the tree, so to speak. But most people on planet Earth aren't too enthralled about going to their boss and shaking the tree because they're busy doing other things. But if they have that incentive because they know you, they trust your client, and they like you, that's a little push they need to go shake the tree and get it. And of course, it doesn't work every time. But, that was something that my sweet mother taught me how to do. Thank you, Mom, if you're listening. And it's something that I've never strayed from in 17 years, not once. When you say make everything organized and easy, you're basically giving, that's what you're doing in a jury trial too, right?
Right.
Your job.
Same concept.
Exactly.
Same concept. It's the exact same concept. It's explaining it like, now of course it's different with an adjuster because they need the codes and the numbers and the diagnosis codes and all that. But other than that, keeping it easy, keeping it simple, but also, and of course, there's software companies and vendors that help. Even Up, can I talk about them?
Of course.
They're
Actually,
great.
Even Up sponsors the podcast.
I do. So I believe I was their second customer ever. I've been with them since 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. So hi, Ray, if you're listening. Yeah. I got a Facebook ad. I was playing on my phone during COVID, and it said, "Are you a personal injury lawyer who's too busy to do their demands? Click here to learn more." And I was like, that's a pretty targeted ad. I'll click there. So I did a demo with Ray and his CEO. And this was back before they had a sales team, before they had a marketing team. It was just them and some software coders. And they told me at the time that was actually their second customer. And I've been with them since then for every single case. And I'm very loud with my support of them. So I talk about them on LinkedIn a lot too. Now, in fact, I'm such a fan of them that if they went out of business, I would stop being a personal injury lawyer, because I'm not doing that myself ever again. And to be fair, like, just the content they put out is light years better than anything I could do. But to take it back to what I was talking about for a second, I used to be doing all that on my own. And that took hours, Sharif, hours. So to put together the type of like well-organized demand that I'm talking about would take like 25 to 35 hours worth of time. That's how long it took. Because you got to read all the, I don't want anyone else doing it. This is my problem. That was one of the things my mom taught me is you've got to know your case better than me, and you should never, ever, ever let the paralegal talk to me on the phone. Because once the paralegal starts talking to me on the phone, I assume you don't know your case. That's what they said. So I don't ever let the paralegal talk to the adjuster, ever. It's just me. And so I would get that together and I would send it out, and it was great. And now, rather than it taking 25 to 35 hours, it takes less than 10 seconds.
That's incredible. Now I know, and actually in talking with Even Up, we were joking because, again, they support the podcast.
Right.
I'm super happy to have them.
They're great.
But they were talking about how like they should run a campaign. It's like, we're not just demands anymore, right? We do so much more. Right. Have you dabbled with some of this new stuff that they? So
I'll be honest with you, I've just stuck with that. But I know about the other things they do. I know about other things a lot of other people do. For me, it's very overwhelming. Like I'm an AI nerd. Like, I talk about AI, I use AI, but I feel like it's so fluid and it changes like week to week, month to month. I just can't keep up with it anymore. You know what I mean? And so I have not done a demo with them on that. I probably should, but I have done other demos, and I've been like, I don't understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. But yes, they do a lot of other stuff now and do it well. And it's funny because back when I signed up for them, AI wasn't even a thing. It wasn't. I mean, this is 2020, right? So what was AI? AI back then was the Terminator. And so the marketing buzzword back then was machine learning. Remember that?
I do.
Machine learning. So it was machine learning. Now it's AI. So no, they're great. And I would encourage any PI lawyers listening to at least, try it out, because what's interesting though with them, kind of going back to what we're talking about, is this only works if you agree on the philosophy that it's worth your time. And a lot of lawyers don't agree with that philosophy, Sharif. They get hired and they file suit the next day, and they don't ever send a demand, ever, until like a mediation, and that's fine. I mean, it's a free country. You can practice the way you want to practice. But when you look at the time value of money, and if the case is worth $100,000, is $100,000 in your client's pocket next month worth more than $100,000 in your client's pocket 2 years from now? Yes, because of interest, and and so you're kind of stealing money at that point. At least that's the way I look at it. Because if the end result is the end result, why wait? Now, granted, there's lots of cases where there's excess coverage, or you're dealing with a corporate defendant where policy limits don't really matter, and that's obviously totally different. But for your routine PI case where you have clear limits and Elon Musk is not the driver of the vehicle, you're typically limited to whatever the limits are.
And the limits have gone up and up and up.
Oh, yes. Thank you, VTLA.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, their lobbying arm is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. And it's funny because, I try not to be a stereotypical PI lawyer, whatever that means. But I think what it means is not having sympathy for people when their insurance rates go up. So people will say to me, oh, my insurance rates go up. And I was like, well, that's because we're doing God's work in the General Assembly. That's why they've gone up. And maybe I shouldn't think that way. But it's like, dear God, like, really, we had $25,000 limits for how long? That's like a day at the ER, right?
I know. Well, you go to Henrico Doctor's office, that's like checking in.
Right. So, I mean, I'm glad that our lobbying arm has bumped those limits up, and, and now we don't have the UIM offset and, a lot of other things that should have happened a long time ago. But, the end result is, yes, premiums have gone up. And, it doesn't bother me, but I can see why it bothers a lot of people, and that's kind of the trade-off. And so I leave the explaining to the experts who are good at explaining stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real issue, though. I mean, it's very sad. Like, we had a case recently where a lady lost her leg. I mean,
Jesus Christ.
Clear liability, but guess what? Minimum coverage.
Right. Yeah.
Right? On both sides, liability and UIM, right? So
what do you do?
So what do you do? I mean, she's got bills in excess of $500,000 the first week of her hospital stay.
Right.
And the most amount of money available for her is $100,000.
Right.
And that pales in comparison to what she's would truly need for the rest of her life.
And I don't know what the solution is other than, car insurance costing $1 million a year, I mean, that's crazy. And it's, what do you say to a client like that? Because it's not fair. And, if you were to go and try to collect from the tortfeasor, well, they probably don't have any money. And even if they did, they're just going to file for bankruptcy, so it's like then you're going to get nothing, and it's unfortunate, but at least the 100,000 is the floor now, or will be the floor very soon, as opposed to 25,000. Right. Which was the floor forever. And I had a case a long time ago where a guy was hit by a vehicle and died. Pedestrian case, death. He didn't have insurance. He didn't even own a car. And the driver only had $25,000 in coverage. That's $25,000 for someone who was hit by a car. And he was on Medicaid, so don't even get me started about that.
Yeah, good luck getting that lien waived, right? I mean,
that was interesting. Yeah, so they thankfully ended up agreeing to a 1/3 split all the way, but it took about 100 years to make that happen. So
that's right. No, it can be tough, and personal injury. Right. It's funny. It's not as easy as it may look. There's a lot that goes into it.
Well, that, and also I think one of the things that I always have tried to do from the beginning is managing client expectations, because certain TV commercials. A client will come to your door. They're not meeting with the TV commercial people. They're meeting with you, but they've watched the TV commercial, so they think their case is worth $8 million. And, having to explain to them, first of all,
it's not $8 million, it's $80 million.
80
you got
million.
It wrong.
Yeah,
you didn't use the settlement calculator online.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, having to sort of course, it's almost impossible to say what a case is worth during a first meeting. I mean, you don't even know what's going on yet. They could be injured the rest of their life. You don't know. But trying to explain to people the difference between that and kind of reality. And, and I've lost cases because of that, where people have wanted me to say in the room, my case is worth $5 million. And I haven't said that, and they've hired someone else.
Yeah, maybe it's a blessing in disguise.
1,000. Well, I've said this many times. There's no case that I regret turning down, but there are plenty of cases I regret taking on.
I'm sure most trial lawyers can probably say that, right?
Plenty, yeah.
Well, Matt, I've actually got a lot more questions, but I recognize we're approaching an hour, so I want to respect your time, but I still have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Of course, man.
So, with all the travel, favorite place?
Oh, wow.
And just so everyone's clear, we're not talking about Matt taking the occasional weekend trip. Matt is a real traveler.
I would say Santorini in Greece, and followed shortly by Edinburgh in Spain. Santorini is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. Greece is just amazing. The lifestyle there, it's so pretty. And then Edinburgh, we went there this May. It's in Scotland, and I don't know if it was just the weather when we were there, but it was just beautiful, so over the top. But yeah, I'd say, my wife and I have a little travel map that we got where we can put push pins on all the places we've been, and then different color push pins on all the places we want to go. It's real cool. But then there's one push pin for our favorite place, and that's on Santorini. So
that's awesome. And you're writing a book, right? Or you've written a book.
I'm really into the whole points and miles thing, and that's how we're able to travel around, with the credit card points and miles. And a lot of the content out there on the internet is very confusing. And so, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it was like, I should write a book and explain this to people like it's a classroom full of sixth graders. And so I've written half of it. And so now I'm working with an employment lawyer, Kirk Schroeder. He's here in town, to find an agent to find me a publisher. And that's how this works, unless you want to self-publish. So I'm in the searching for agent part of this process. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Maybe no one cares,
I care. I'm ready. As I've told you before, I'm ready to buy and read your book.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a question of whether or not lots and lots and lots of people say that. But, I'm writing it. I've written half of it. I didn't use AI. I read it myself like a grown-up. And we'll see what happens, man.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, last question. If you could go back to Matt Long, 17 years ago when you first started practicing law and give him some advice, what would you tell him?
Oh, man. That's a good question. Okay. Here's what I would do. So I'm going to talk about a loss. I don't think a lot of lawyers do that enough. They like to talk about their wins, but they don't like to talk about
we
their
like
losses.
to beat our chests and get on billboards. That's right.
Right. So here we're going to talk about a loss. So I was maybe I wasn't a baby. I mean, I was like 4 years out, maybe 5 years. I don't know if that's still a baby lawyer. Am I allowed to say baby lawyer anymore?
You are.
Oh, okay.
I still
on this
consider
podcast.
myself a baby lawyer.
So anyway, I was second chair on a case. It was a business litigation case, jury trial. It was, two companies fighting over lots of money, and it was largely a battle of experts. And so we had our expert, they had theirs. Our expert was an accountant. And they had filed a motion in limine to exclude our expert that was heard after voir dire. And the judge granted the motion in limine and then dismissed the case because A, we had already taken a non-suit, and B, it was a battle of experts. So with no expert, there's no case. There's no damages. And like I said, I was second chair, and internally within the firm, that the expert, I guess, wasn't my responsibility. You know what I mean? Here were my responsibilities over here, and the expert and all of that stuff was another lawyer's responsibility. And so it was after that case I learned that, and this would be my advice, is there's no such thing as second chair in the eyes of the client, the court, and the bar. If your name is on the pleadings and you're involved in the case and you're sitting at counsel table, it's your damn case. You are not second chair to anyone, and you need to take ownership of everything and make sure that everything's everything's copacetic, because you can't just say, oh, well, that was so-and-so's responsibility. And so the advice I'd give is for young lawyers, don't let yourself be in that position. Don't put your head in the sand. Don't be an ostrich, because at the end of the day, you're a lawyer. And if your name's on the pleadings, you're just as responsible as anyone else. So you need to make sure that everything's copacetic and not just rely on other people. Did I answer that well?
You did.
Yeah,
You did.
I think that's real important. I don't think a lot of lawyers do that. And I at that time was like, I will never ever be second chair, whatever that means, ever again. And I will never, ever, ever put my head in the sand with any aspect of the case. Even if I'm working in on someone else, I will check behind them and make sure everything's done the right way.
Matt, you're a great guy, great colleague in Richmond. Thank you so much for taking the time to come join the podcast.
Thanks for having me on,
man. This has been a lot of fun. So
Absolutely.
We'll have to, what was last time? Chicken Fiesta?
Chicken Fiesta.
Do that again.
Okay.
So, yeah. So real quick before we end, I like Chicken Fiesta. So I'm at home. I'm responsible for dinners on the weekend, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And for many, many weeks in a row, it was Chicken Fiesta on Saturday night. So much so that my wife has now forbidden me from getting Chicken Fiesta for the family.
I agree with your wife. I mean, that sounds like every night, every weekend. I don't think I could do that.
I can. Let's do it again. All right, anyways, this has been a lot of fun.
Thanks, man.
Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of RVA Trial Lawyers, Virginia's trial lawyer podcast. For more episodes, check out rvatriallawyers.com.